Bro, yesterday I was talking with this guy, right? And I had just met him, so we were having like the basic kind of like small talk conversation, like where you from, what do you like to do, stuff like that, right? And I remember the conversation reached a deeper level. There was a moment where the conversation reached a deeper level. So I was talking about my native language and how technically my native language is Indonesian, right? But because I went to an English speaking school, I don't speak Indonesian fluently or well at all. So I find it very difficult to connect with the people of my culture, with Indonesian people, because we can't speak the same language. So I kind of feel like an outsider in my own culture. And he was like, dude, same. My native language is Chinese, but I went to an English speaking school. So I also feel like I can't connect with the people of my culture. So suddenly, like, we related to each other on this deeper level. Like, it was like we had this connection. And it went from like a basic conversation to like a really deep one. So I think a lot of the beauty in social interactions doesn't just come from like deep relationships with people. Like, I think that's a beautiful part of life, yes. But I think a lot of the beauty in social interactions comes from like these moments like this where you just connect with another human being. It's truly beautiful. I used to not be able to connect with anyone. Like, my social skills used to be so bad that all my relationships, all my conversations with people were very shallow. I never had moments like this where I like connected with other people. So in this video, I'm going to share with you 5 mistakes that I used to always make that were holding me back from connecting with people on a deeper level. Now, the reality is I was making dozens of mistakes, so I'm only going to be able to mention 5 in this video. So the first mistake is giving really short or basic answers to the basic questions in conversation. So in conversation, there will be these basic questions. For example, like, where are you from? What do you study? What do you like to do? You know, these really basic questions. And you might be making the mistake of answering them literally, like answering these questions with really short answers. Like, if someone asks you, where are you from? You might say, Australia. You? And this seems good in theory, like you're answering the question that they want to know and you're giving them an opportunity to speak, right? But you have to realize that when people ask these very basic questions, they don't actually want to know like the literal answer. Like, they don't actually want to know, oh, where are you from? They're actually asking, okay, please tell me anything about you with which I can connect. So when people ask these basic questions, do them the favor of telling them a bit about yourself, adding more substance to your answer so that they can like take the conversation down the route that they can relate with. So I'll give you a basic example. If someone asks me, for example, like, oh, where are you from? Instead of saying, Australia, you? I could say something like, oh, right now I live in Australia. I go to university here, but I was born and I grew up in Indonesia. And I went to an English speaking school there though, so I don't connect with the culture as much. But so I kind of feel like I'm torn between different cultures and I don't really feel like I'm from any one area. I feel more like a global citizen. It's like it's giving them different ways to take the conversation. I'm basically saying, okay, here's a bunch of stuff about me. Do you connect with any of this? Do you relate to any of this? And they could go like, oh, you're a university student too? Or, oh, you lived abroad as well? So you're giving them opportunities. You're giving them different ways to take the conversation, basically. Force yourself to just speak a bit more with these answers, like what I did earlier. Okay, so point two is not listening to understand the other person, right? So what do I mean by that? If the other person's speaking in the conversation, you might be listening to them. You might think listening just means not speaking. But listening actually means paying attention to the other person and what they're saying. So often people in conversations, and you might make this mistake, they're listening, but they're just waiting for their turn to speak. They're like, okay, I've got this point that I'm going to bring up. I'm going to wait for this guy to finish speaking and then I'll bring up my point. Or you might be having insecure thoughts, like you might be thinking, oh man, am I boring? Am I smiling enough? Stuff like that. And it can be hard to not have these thoughts. But the truth is, the guy is speaking. He wants to feel understood. He wants to feel listened to. And people can tell when you're not like actively listening to them and trying to understand them. Like all the time I'll be speaking to people and I can tell that they're not actually listening to what I'm saying. They're just waiting for their turn to speak. And when you find that person who is actually listening to you to try to understand you and to make you feel heard, it's a beautiful thing. People crave it. So be that person for other people and actually listen to them and try to understand them. Okay, now point number 3 is thinking that people care that you're nervous. So if you're the type of person who gets nervous in conversations or you have social anxiety, which is completely normal, by the way, it is something you can work on and get better at. But the thing is, in the moment, I know because I used to be always nervous in conversations. I used to get really like anxious and I would be in my head overthinking. But the mistake is thinking that people care. Now, I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean that in a way that, for example, when I was nervous and scared in conversations, I would think like, oh no, this guy is feeling uncomfortable, you know, he's not enjoying the conversation because I'm so nervous. But the truth is that people just want to connect with you and they want to be understood. They don't care that you're nervous. You know, it's not like you're holding the conversation back or anything. Being nervous is not a bad thing. A bad thing would be like being a dickhead, like, you know, insulting the other person or hogging the conversation and always talking about yourself. Being nervous is not a bad thing. People don't really care about that. They're not like, oh, this guy's nervous, I don't want to speak to him. No, they want to understand you, they want to be understood. And there's this quote I really like by Dale Carnegie. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by getting people to become interested in you. So the thing is, like, as long as you're interested in other people and you're making them feel heard and understood, they're not going to care that you're nervous. They're not going to care that you're, you know, overthinking in your head. They're not going to care that you are awkward and all that. So, you know, accept the fact that you feel nervous and awkward in the moment. You know, don't judge it, don't resist it. Because if you resist your nervousness, it will amplify and it will get bigger and stronger and it will get out of control. So work on your nervousness at home, but in the moment, just accept it for what it is. Okay, point number 4. I used to do this all the time. It's pretending to like something or agree with someone just to please them or just to avoid offending them. So someone, for example, might have an opinion on something or they might like a certain movie, for example. And it can feel kind of weird to like disagree with them. Like they might say like, oh, I love Barbie movie. It's my favorite movie of all time. And you might, you know, in your head, you might think like, oh man, I hate that movie. And you might feel like uncomfortable mentioning that you hate it. So when they ask you for your opinion, like, oh, do you like the Barbie movie? You know, you don't want to make them, you know, you want to please them. You don't want to offend them. So you're not going to say your true opinion. You're not going to say, nah, I don't like that movie, dude. The thing is, when you do that, when you try to give a certain opinion just to please the other person or avoid offending them, you are basically lying to yourself. You are sacrificing your authenticity. People aren't looking for people to agree with them on everything, right? Because you take 2 people, they're not going to agree on everything. They're not going to have the same opinions on everything. So the truth is, people don't want you to agree with them on everything. They just want to know the true you, your true thoughts and everything. And if someone hates you for a true opinion that you have, then you guys were never meant to be friends in the first place, right? So you've got nothing to lose by just giving your true opinions and thoughts. Now, of course, I'm not saying like argue every single point that they bring up. You know, if you don't want to bring up conflict or they don't ask you for your opinion, you don't have to bring it up. But I'm talking about if they ask you for your opinion, okay? Now, point number 5, and this one's huge. Beating yourself up for making any of these mistakes in this video. Now, you might be making one or all of the mistakes in this video, and it can be very frustrating, like, oh man, I'm making these mistakes, it's holding me back. And you might continue to make these mistakes in the future. But you have to realize that these mistakes are habits that you've been developing over your whole life. So you're not going to be able to change them overnight. It's going to take time to change these habits and replace them with different ones. But when you make mistakes, you are learning. So embrace the learning process, and you are going to make mistakes. You are going to continue to make these mistakes in conversations, and you have to be patient and enjoy the process. But bro, the fact that you're watching a video like this about social skills is amazing. You are going to make progress, because the reality is most people make some, if not all, of the mistakes that I mentioned in this video, and many more. But 99% of people don't even work on their social skills. So the fact that you're here watching this video is amazing, bro. You are gonna make progress. You are gonna reach that next level if you just keep working on it and you stay persistent. So don't beat yourself up over making any kind of social mistakes. Just enjoy the process. And I know it sounds cheesy as hell, like enjoy the process, but you know what I mean? Like, embrace the mistakes, you will make progress. So thanks for watching to the end, bro. I appreciate it. Yeah, if you want more videos on social skills or other topics, please feel free to subscribe. I'll definitely be making more videos like this. I could talk about this topic all day, to be honest. But yeah, thank you.